Hi everybody, Beth here from Access Paranormal for this week's I Want to Know, which is all about tips for your private, residential, domestic cases. There's lots of different terms that get used for this particular stuff. I say private cases because that's what a lot of people here in Australia use that term as well. But yeah, you know, if it's a very different kettle of fish for those who may not really know. You know, if you're looking at investigating public locations that have got historical significance, or not necessarily, not all of them do. You know, a couple of years ago at least, I investigated the Lexington Library in Kentucky, and it's almost a semi-brand new building, but the land apparently had an old hotel and lots of interesting things happen there. So it doesn't always necessarily have to be a historical location for a public location. Hi Karen, how are you? Hi Chris, good to see you. Oh, hey Glenn. Oh. So yeah, there are different types of investigating. Private cases are a whole different ball game. A lot of people know, some people don't. It's a different level of seriousness because it's not about you. It's actually more about the fact that you're helping somebody solve a problem. And there are lots of different ways that people investigate. I know when I did the wonderful workshop in Malaysia with Renata and Anne mid-year at the time of this recording of this video, you know, when we were putting our presentations together, we were talking about private cases. You know, the system I had in place was a lot more methodical, probably a lot more detailed than Renata's, but then Renata's got counselling background and she's very astute with you know the way in which she carries out her investigation. So there's not really a right or wrong. There are things that you probably should have that you should not, you know, have as part of your investigating process. There should be a process in place, and we'll talk a bit about that as well. Hi Vicky, good to see you. Hey Andrew, good to see you. Doing the wave, they've got the wave sort of emoticons, if you want to call it that. So I'll do the emoticon back as well, looking like complete twat. But anyway, so yeah, there's lots of different processes in place. Everyone has slightly different ones. Mine's, as I said, is probably a little bit more in depth than some, but that's because you know, that's just what's what works for me. And but again, there are things that you should definitely have regardless of what type of process you have in place as well. So firstly, for me, queries come through from the website. As you probably would know, there's a submit information. If there's a case inquiry, I obviously have an idea of where people are placed as well. So obviously if they're not in New South Wales where I am at, I will actually refer them to another team. But that's the first tip, is make sure you actually know where you're getting your client inquiries from, because you can get into detail and talk about phenomena and then turn around and go, great, well, you know, we can give you a call. What's your number? Look at the number and realize, wow, they're actually, you know, a 5-hour flight away from me. So, and that can happen in Australia. We're a big piece of land. So keep that in mind. Make sure that you kind of know where these people are coming from, so you can actually refer to if you had. Yeah, well, as Vicky says, in Adelaide as well. So there's that too. So keep that as part of it. For me also, so there's an email perspective, and then I go towards, if there's enough information, there's enough exchange going on, I'll actually go to the next part, which is actually a phone interview, as I was talking about. That is where I ask the same questions again. We'll talk a bit about that soon. And also about more in depth about their experiences as well. You get a bit more of an idea of the way in which somebody speaks about their experiences. It gives a lot more clues away as well, so they can give you a bit of an assessment. Because for me, it's assessing whether or not this is actually going to be something that's going to take the time to investigate, or they're going to get the help they need. If it's not going to be from me, if it's going to be from someone else, that's the best. This is what this whole process is about, because it takes a lot of work to do actual investigation. And if you're doing private cases, it isn't just the one investigation that you're going to go and then go, right, your place is haunted. No, it's not. It should be something that's done quite a few times over time to be able to gather information. It's not something you just do straight away and then ascertain. Generally, that's what should be happening from my perspective. So of course, there's if it goes to the next stage for me, it's the face-to-face interview. Again, you get a lot more clues. Again, asking the same questions, going through the process that way. And then if it does seem like it warrants it, then actually we'll plan to go through to an investigation. Now, I'm an independent investigator, a freelancer, if you want to call it that. I don't actually have my own team. I actually kind of float about, nicely, of course. But of course, I have people that I call upon when I do take on cases myself. So it's got to be a pretty special case. It's got to the point now, it's maybe 1 or 2 cases a year that I will actually look at taking on myself, with people and other teams that I'll integrate with it as well. So I know a lot of people say, oh, you know, I've done 30 cases in the last 5 years. Well, you haven't, from my perspective, done it thoroughly enough to be able to find enough information in that case, because cases take time. It's not how many cases you've done, it's what you've actually done with those particular cases and what you've provided for people as well. And of course, you know, while going through all this particular information, there's obviously evidence. They say evidence review. I really don't like using the word evidence review because it means you've positively found something you may not have, but it's a review of your footage and your information that you've captured and recorded, and obviously witness experiences as well. I think that's important to integrate, even though you can't really base too much on that. I think it still adds to helping explain something that might be happening. And also forms as well. I know it's boring, paperwork. Trust me, what I do for work, so much paperwork. But paperwork's really important to be able to protect yourself and also protect the clients too. So I'll talk a little bit about that soon. And of course, follow up. You know, a lot of teams, you know, once they've done sort of their, I guess you could say, reveal of the information they have found, then kind of leave it at that. There are some teams I do know that actually do then follow up with the client afterwards, you know, every couple of months. Hey, how's things going? Just checking in, blah, blah, blah. It's a good relationship. It puts obviously a good reputation for what we do for investigating as well. So, you know, the fact that we actually care about the people afterwards, it's not just something just like, yep, okay, there you go. Enjoy your life. I'm just going to go and untoddle off now. Touching base as well. There have been times in my experience where possible activity has increased again after what's been advised as well. Often it's because they haven't taken the advice. We all know those kinds of situations. So there's that too as well. So firstly, first tip, okay, so the email section of it. So literally the initial contact of somebody contacting you regarding something possibly paranormal happening in their home. Have a really good, robust email questionnaire on your website. If you have a website, which I highly recommend, have a really good one. And when I say robust, I mean have lots of questions on it. I probably should actually add even more questions to the one that I've got now, because the first thing it does, I know it sounds really awful to a point, but I will actually say this, it does somewhat deter people from just sending you a 2-sentence email saying, I've got something happening in my home, please help. Well, that's not going to help you because you've got no idea what you're up against. You've got no idea the level of activity. You've got no idea who's being affected. So make sure that you've got quite a few questions, really detailed, time of day, what's happening, blah, blah, blah. If people have some idea, they'll be able to fill in some of it. But again, it's almost a deterrent if there's lots of questions. If someone wants to waste your time, they're not going to be bothered filling out a long questionnaire. So make sure that when you're on your website that you've actually got quite a few questions when it comes to actually getting your email inquiries through. So that's my first tip. Second tip, with the phone interview, have questions that you know that you're going to actually ask again, as I mentioned before, when you're actually interviewing face-to-face. You want to be able to see whether or not the information differs a fair bit, or just, a little bit's okay, but if the information is differing a fair bit, and you'll get to know this after time, it's a skill with interviewing people. So their experiences might slightly change. So they might say, when I was standing in the kitchen, the cupboards were slamming, constantly for at least 5 seconds. And then when you speak to them again, oh, look, it only happened briefly. Or, oh no, it happened for almost an hour, and my mum came into the kitchen and saw the same thing. So little things like that, it's rare, but it does happen. There are some people that may feel that they want to contact somebody regarding something paranormal they feel is happening in their home, but they may just want to feel less lonely where they are, and there may not be something possibly paranormal happening at all. So this, again, is this a time saver thing? You want to be able to invest your time and knowledge and energy into cases that can actually potentially be something that you're actually going to be helping somebody with. So there's that. Third tip, I would say, again, with face-to-face interviews, ask the same questions again. Again, you will get more of a feel of the type of person it is. Also being able to walk around the location, obviously with their permission, you'll have a bit more of an idea of where the possible potential activity is starting to occur as well. That kind of stuff, so you get a bit of a chance to get a bit of a feel for it. So ask the same questions again. Literally, I cannot stress that enough. It's been an absolute lifesaver for me when it comes to possible paranormal cases, because that's actually eliminated quite a few people in the past. So there's that. Another tip is when it comes to the actual investigation, always have somebody with the client. Always have somebody around with that particular person to help, answer any questions, always have that person there. I know there are some teams that, even around the world, that actually have paranormal investigations in someone's home, but they've asked that person to leave the premises for the entire 10, 12 hours maybe. I wouldn't recommend that personally myself, because I wouldn't let somebody in my home while I'm not there, just so they can find out if something maybe possibly paranormal. Depends. Sometimes people can be very desperate and they just want somebody there to actually help them figure out what's going on, and they may be willing to do almost anything. That's where we've got to be really careful, because we do have a position of power there. Sometimes unnecessarily. It should be a collaboration. But again, we're looked upon as the experts in regarding what we're doing, as we should, but again, don't abuse that. So again, just make sure that you're including them in the process. Have them there at the location. They know everything that's happening. They've been briefed on the process as well. That's another thing too. They've got no idea. They've watched those shows, and we all know that those shows aren't always accurate. It's, you've got to be able to say, this is what's going to happen. This is what we're going to be doing. This is what it's like. And just give them that briefing, give them that confidence as well. And then obviously when it comes to an investigation, having somebody there with them, coaching them all the way through it. Are you okay? Is everything all right? This is what we're going to do next, blah, blah, blah. Again, as I said, it's each their own. I really wouldn't think that it's wise to not have somebody that lives in the home actually there. Again, on the flip side, you don't want a crowd. You don't want them and their mates coming through, sitting there watching the CCTV footage of the night, thinking it's like just another Netflix. That has happened to other teams in the past. I know of that happening to teams in the past. Again, if you've got a really good questioning and robust interviewing process, you'll find out that the kind of people that will do that are the ones that watch those shows. We've all done that and been there before, having watched them, but will want something like that, like it's having a live paranormal investigation happening in their home for no good reason apart from just seeing that what you can do. And that does happen, and there's clues in the interviewing that people will give away about the fact that that's their intention as well. So that's something also to keep in mind too. Like I said, forms protect us all with this kind of stuff. The most important one, I would say, is your confidentiality form. Reason being is you're saying, giving the form to the client saying, I'm actually going to make sure that the information that you're going to give me and that I'm collecting is going to stay with me and not go anywhere publicly in any way, shape or form, social media, nothing. I will always make sure if I'm ever going to want to do that, it's with your written expressed permission and you're okay with that. There's been clients, it's funny, some clients can be obviously very guarded, completely understandable. There are some that actually can be quite open to the fact, well, yeah, it's okay if you want to post something, just don't post the location. So a lot of times you'll find teams will say, I'm at an undisclosed location. Could be a business that doesn't want to know that that you're there on a public sort of persona, and also from a private case perspective as well. Very rarely you'll actually find people doing live videos or posting anything much about private residential cases. It does happen because they've obviously sought, fingers crossed, they've sought permission from the client themselves to say that they can actually do that. And of course, another tip, my last tip, is following up. So following up with your client afterwards. So you, again, like I mentioned before, you don't want to sit there and just, go through this whole process. And if you're doing it from a methodical angle, you're going to, be involved in their lives somewhat, hearing some probably uncomfortable stuff sometimes because you do have to probe a little bit, but actually going through all that kind of information with them, and then actually finding out if they're okay afterwards. Oh, you're right, you're hanging out, you just checking in, that kind of thing. It's just a bit of an aftercare. It doesn't have to be every week. It can be, once a month, once every couple of months. Hey, just checking in, how's the family or what's happening with that. So keep that in mind. That's a couple of tips there if you're ever looking at dealing with private residential cases. Again, it is another ball game and a half. It's a level of seriousness that shouldn't be entered into lightly. That's for sure. Again, it's you're dealing with people's emotions, you're dealing with people's fears in their own home, and taking them on can be extremely rewarding. I love it because it really can be like a Rubik's Cube to me. It's really trying to figure out the pieces that why something might be happening, and it's 10 different reasons for why something might be happening, possibly paranormal, that could be explained. So it's really helping people out. Another big tip, I must admit, that I didn't actually mention previously, is when you're actually at your email stage, find out from your client what their aim is. And that sounds a bit strange, but find out what their purpose is. Do they believe that something is there? Do they want to know if something is there? or do they want something, they 100% believe that something is there and they want it to be taken care of from a spiritual perspective, so they want a cleansing of some sort. Find out from the beginning. Find out if they're going to be open to listening to other alternative explanations, or if they 100% believe what they're going through, and you're the kind of person that can help them through that as well. Because you'll know your team, you'll know yourself and your style as an investigator, whether or not you actually can help them with that. So there's that as well. So keep that in mind, guys. Do take care. As I said, there's some couple of cool tips there if you do want to look at taking on private residential cases. And if you already are as well, some information there if you haven't heard of it before or might want to add to it, or again, comment, use the comment section down below. Let me know what you do. Let me know what you think, and stuff that works for you and your team when it comes to taking on these really intriguing cases. So do take care, everybody. At this time of recording, it's a week till Halloween, and we're very excited here at headquarters of Access Paranormal. So do take care. Until next week.